Good morning. I'm Joshua M. Arguelles, and now I will going to discuss about the principle of navigational watch. So the officer in charge of navigational watch is the master representative and is primarily responsible at all times for safe navigation of the ship and for complying with the international regulation for preventing collisions at sea. So it means that if you are the OOW or officer on the watch, you are the master representative on the navigation. So you must be comply to the rules of the road or the call regs 1972 and all the safe safety in navigation. So, taking over the watch, the officer in charge of navigational watch shall not hand over the watch to the relieving officer if there is reason to believe that the latter is not capable of carrying out the watchkeeping duties effectively. So, this means that if you are a outgoing officer, you must ensure that you are you are you have live with the good turnover with your relieving officer so that the navigation or navigational watch will be smooth on the upper head. Prior to taking over the watch, relieving officers shall satisfy themselves as to ship's estimate or true position and confirm its intended track course and speed and UMS control as appropriate, and shall note any dangers to navigation expected to be encountered during their watch. So this means that the relieving officer or the ingoing officer uh, shall satisfy that the ship is on the true position or onto the intended track. You can see it through the XDs or make a actual plotting of position on the chart. So in here, relieving officer shall personally satisfy themselves regarding the standing orders and other special instruction of the master relating to the navigation of the ship. So this means that what the command of the master must be the the main must be the main standing orders for the outgoing or the ingoing officer. Position, course, speed, and draft of the ship. This is important. The outgoing officer must inform the relieving officer with regards to the position of the ship, course, speed, draft of the ship, prevailing and predicted tides, current, weather, visibility, and the effect of these factors upon course and speed. So, the factors of tides, currents, and weather is also included. Procedure for the use of main engines to maneuver when the main engines are on bridge control and navigational situation, including but not limited to the operational condition of all navigational and safety equipment being used or likely to be used during watch. So, officer must ensure that the safety equipment are being used. The errors of gyro and magnetic compass, as we know that the errors will make a huge impact on our when we are underway. because that simple errors or in magnetic compass can deviate our course. Presence and movement of ship inside or known to be in the vicinity. The condition and hazard likely to be encountered during the watch. So as we know, we cannot we cannot predict the future. So prevention is better than cure. Possible effects of heel, trim, water density, and squat under keel clearance. So you must consider the heel, the trim, water density, and squat when your vessel is in the channel or whatsoever, and your UKC or under keel clearance. If at any time the officer in charge of the navigational watch is to be relieved when a maneuver or other action to avoid any hazard is taking place, the relief of that officer should be deferred until such action has been completed. So before the changing of the officer, if there is any hazard, or for example there is a need of the maneuvering action, so it must be completed first before they will swap. The officer in charge of navigational watch shall keep the watch on the bridge. So it is very important that the bridge are always unmanned with competent officers. So keep the watch on the bridge. In no circumstances, leave the bridge until properly relieved. Only leave when you turn over when your turnover is completely. Continue to be responsible for the safe navigation of the ship despite the presence of the master on the bridge until informed specifically that the master has assumed the responsibility and is mutually understood. So just continue the responsible safe navigation even if the ship is on or off the bridge, and always understand its command. During the watch, the course steered position and speed should be checked at sufficient frequent intervals using any available navigational aids necessary to ensure that the ship follows the planned course. So we cannot say. So always check the course steered position and speed because sometimes it is not accurate because there is an external factors, for example the current, the weather, the tide. These can affect our vessel course position and speed. The officer in charge of navigational watch shall have full knowledge of the location and operation of all safety and navigation equipment on board the ship and shall be aware and take account of the operating limitation of such equipment. So, officer in charge of the navigational watch should have full insight with regards to the uh, safety and navigational equipment. He must know where it is located and how to use it. The officer in charge of the navigational watch shall not be assigned or undertake any duties which would interfere with the safe navigation of ship. So, the officer in charge must focus on the watch keeping, not with other that can interfere the safe navigation of ship. When using radar, the officer in charge of the navigational watch shall bear in mind that necessity to comply at all times with the provision on the use of radar contained in the International Regulation for Preventing Collisions at Sea, 1972, as amended into force. So, as we know, radar is an aid to navigation and we cannot always rely to it. But we can help it to determine the bearing, the relative bearing, the true bearing, or the our speed over ground. But as I've said earlier, you cannot rely always with the radar. In case of need, the officer in charge of the navigational watch shall not hesitate to use the helm, engines, and sound signaling apparatus. So if you need, for example, your ship has to be not under command, so you should sound signaling apparatus or turn on your lights to inform the vicinity that you are not under command. Officers of Navigational Watch shall know the handling characteristics of their ships, including its stopping distance, and should appreciate that other ships may have different handling characteristics. So, you must be familiarized with your own ships for you to be able to navigate smoothly. And the ships are different with its types. There, for example, your ship is VLCC, and you encounter and you are with approximate course with the vessel with types of bulk carrier, and we know that your ship is very big, and it's you must have in ample time for the stopping distance. A proper record should be kept during the watch or the movements and activities relating to navigation of the ship. So you must be have your logbook, all types of logbook, because it is very important for the safety of the ship. It is of special importance that all the times the officer in charge of the navigational watch ensures that a proper lookout is maintained. So, according to Call Regs 1972, uh, uh, rule number 4, rather, rule number 5 about the lookout uh, is always maintained. So, you must be follow that for the safe navigation. Operational test of shipboard navigational equipment shall be carried out at sea as frequently as practicable and as circumstances permit, in particular before hazardous conditions affecting navigation are expected. So you must you must test the shipboard navigational equipment so that we will ensure the accuracy of it. The officer in charge of navigational watch will make regular checks to ensure that the person steering the ship or the automatic pilot is steering the correct course. So, uh, the person steering must be fully aware with the course the vessel is to be intending to sail. The standard compass errors determined at the last ones I watched, and when possible, after any major alteration, of course, the standard and gyro compass are frequently compared and repeatedly synchronized with their master compass. So, for you to be able to check the accuracy of your compass, you must check it with the other compass, so that if they are the same, so you will have the knowledge, or you have the insight that they are inaccurate. The automatic pilot tested manually at least once a watch. So automatic pilot is tested manually. The navigation signal lights and other navigational equipment are functioning properly. So it is very important and very crucial, because in call regs, you must have the signal lights for you to be able to see by the other vessel on the vicinity. The radio equipment is functioning properly. It is also important because communication is one of the major major one of the major component on the vessel. The UMS controls, alarms, and indicators are functioning properly. The officer in charge of the navigation should bear in mind the necessity to comply at all times with the requirements in force of the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea. So, in Navigational Watch, you must ensure that you are complying with the standards of the or the rather minimum standards of the safety of life at sea 1974 or the SOLAS Convention. The officer of navigation shall take into account the needs to station a person to steer the ship and to put the steering into manual control in good time to allow any potentially hazardous situation to be dealt with in a safe manner. And with the ship under automatic steering, it is highly dangerous to allow a situation to develop to the point where the officer in charge of the navigation watch is without assistance and has to break the continuity of the lockout in order to take emergency action. Also, officer of the navigation watch shall be roughly familiar with the use of electronic navigation aids. This includes the ECDs, radar ARPA, and barometer, echo sounder. So, officer in charge must be know how to use it. The officer in charge of navigational watch shall use the radar whenever restricted visit is encountered or expected at all times in congested waters having due regards to the limitation. So, you can use the radar as an aid to navigation, but always bear in mind that the radar has its limitation. So, don't be uh, don't be rely it at all times. Provide a com- com- compet- competitive lookout on your vessel. The officer in charge of the navigational watch shall ensure that the range scales employed are changed at sufficiently frequent intervals so that echoes are detected as early as possible. It should be borne in mind that small or poor echoes may escape detection. Whenever radar is in use, the officer in charge of the navigation watch shall select an appropriate range scale and interpret the display carefully and should ensure that plotting or systematic analysis is commenced